Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Houston Oasis. My name is Alexis Potaman. I will be the MC for y'all today. I like to start every morning off with highlighting a couple of our core values that I feel are particularly relevant. As I just spilled coffee and our awesome people helped clean it up, I want to highlight human hands solve human problems. And people are more important than beliefs. We've got a great lineup for y'all today. We did have Terry Ismer, who was going to give our community moment. She is not here. She may have the flu, so we will not be having a community moment today. But we have a fantastic main speaker, Josette Hart, who will be sharing her family story of immigrating from France to the U.S. during the Holocaust. And we have fantastic musicians here today, Glenn Ackerman and Joel Love. We're happy to welcome Glenn back. He is a Texas-based bassist, composer, educator, and leader of the Fusion Jazz Trio, a versatile performer, and has shared the stage with many artists. And we're very fortunate to have him here this morning. So with that, we'll let y'all kick it off.
Good morning, everyone. How are you doing? All right. I'd like to introduce my companion today, Joel Love. Give him a big hand. We're going to start with a Thelonious Monk tune called Green Chimneys. Thank you so much. When I planned the music for this program, when I planned the music for this gathering, which was maybe a couple days ago, I was thinking, am I feeling groovy or am I feeling jazzy? So I felt exceptionally groovy because of this wonderful weather we're having. So we got another groovy tune for you. This is when I wrote an original off my second album as a band leader, which you can find. You just type Glenn Ackerman on the search bar of any digital music platform, like Apple Music, for example. And you can bring my music up. This song is called Flamethrower. Thank you, thank you. As a side note, that song's called Flamethrower. Once I had a fan who, I was on stage and I had a couple basses up here, and it wasn't here, it was somewhere else. And my fan nicknamed my bass the Flamethrower because it has kind of flame koa wood on top. And so I named that song after my bass. And that last riff you heard was all the open strings on my 6-string bass. There we go. And anyways, thank you so much. That's the beginning of our show.
Thank y'all so much. All right, so this is the time where we would normally do a community moment. Like I said, our community moment speaker is not here this morning, so we are going to take a break and then come back for the main talk. But this is a nice reminder of, if you're interested in doing a community moment, please get with someone at the front desk or one of the board members. We can help get you scheduled. It's a 5 to 10 minute talk. It can be about anything from a book you've read to a trip you've taken or a thought you've had that you want to share with the group. And so we can get you scheduled if you want to do that. But we are going to take a break, take a quick coffee break. We normally kind of do this in the middle after the communion moment. We're going to do one a little early, and I will not be getting coffee because I don't want to spill again. So. But before we break, I do want to mention a couple of upcoming events that we have. I want to remind everybody that if you have not voted already, Election Day is on Tuesday, November 4th. So definitely get out and vote. Look up what is on your ballot. There's 17 constitutional amendments up for everyone in the state of Texas to vote on. So if you don't have anyone running locally, that's on the ballot. Also on Thursday, this coming Thursday, November 6th, we have the Northside Happy Hour. And then next Thursday, the 13th, we have midweek late lunch brunch. And we've got a lot of events coming up. So if you're also not on our email list, please sign up on our email list out at the front desk and keep you all connected. And with that, we'll take a 10-minute break. Sound good? All right. All right, welcome back, everybody. Hopefully, you refilled your coffee or your tea, or were like me and just sipped on her water. Uh, All right, so we're going to have our main talk today. Our guest is Josette Hart, and like I said, she will be sharing her family's story of immigrating from France to the U.S. during the Holocaust. So please help me welcome to the front, Josette.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Josette Hart, and I'm a Holocaust survivor. I was born June 12th, 1944, 6 days after D-Day in occupied France. My story is about upstanders and luck that my family had. Now I'm going to go back a little history. In 1939, France, on September 3rd, declared war on Germany. However, they didn't go into battle, per se, until May of 1940. And the war ended in June of 1940. So it was 6 weeks. My father was drafted into the French army, and when he was released or discharged, let me show you on the map. Can you hear me? Thank you. So anyhow, he was discharged into near Grenoble, France, and he was able to get a job very shortly. Back then, Jews were not to be hired for anything. However, his boss, he worked for the Viscose Foundation, which made viscose. In fact, it was invented in a small town near Grenoble called Échirol, and that's where I was actually born, in Échirol, but I always say I'm born in Grenoble. And he got a job at the Viscose company, and he was a head dispatcher. What is that for? Oh. Right there. In the meanwhile, my mother and sister were right up there on the Swiss border with my paternal grandparents. So my dad was working. He also wanted to join the resistance. However, he was new to the area. So they didn't trust him right away because he was new. He could have been a spy for all I know, but he wasn't. He was a good guy. So anyhow, he finally got into the resistance. Meanwhile, my family up at a town called Gex, which is right on the Swiss border. So my mother, who was with her in-laws and my sister, wanted to join my father, who was in the free zone, or the Vichy. France was divided in two. The German occupied, you see, is red, and the Vichy is in blue. And that was a free zone. And so my mother wanted to join my dad. So they had a Gentile friend, very good friend and neighbor, who assisted my mother to join my dad. Now, she had to wear the yellow star. Do you know what that is? Okay. And they started walked for 12 hours over mountains. All that area is mountainous. And, oops, gone, well. And they were stopped by German troops on their walk. So my mother, she was a smart thinker. With her yellow star, she covered it up with her lapel, and they kept on walking. And this gentleman, his name was Monsieur Fournier. He was a hunter, so he had a gun with him in case anything happened, but they were never stopped. So they walked for about 12 hours till they could get to a train station where my mother could take off her star because she was entering the unoccupied zone. Vichy was under under a Marshal Pétain, Philippe Pétain, who was a general in the First World War. And he was like a puppet to Adolf Hitler. So anyhow, my mother joined my father. And then they wanted my sister to join them. And she was still up in the north in a town called Josette, which is right there. And the same gentleman took this was 1942 now, took my sister, who was 5 years old, took her on the train, and she had to give her name as his daughter's name. She couldn't say she was Jacqueline Ash. She had to say she was Josiane Fournier. And remember, she's 5 years old, so who knows what a 5-year-old is going to say. So anyhow, they never questioned her. And then she got to my parents, and my mother was picking her up. This is 1942, which was a very bad year for food in France. My mother had a small case, empty suitcase, and there was a vendor on the side of the road who sold carrots. And she filled the suitcase with carrots. And my sister wouldn't eat carrots for years. Also, my dad brought home a rabbit. Well, she thought it was a pet, but it was for food. And if my mother had a potato, she would eat the skin and give the innards to my sister. They also had cabbages, and when my sister was 5 years old, they had half a barrel, and they made her stomp in it to make sauerkraut, because it's fermented and it will keep. And here's a little joke. That's why I always told her that she had stinky feet. So anyhow, after November 1942, all of France was German-controlled, even though it says free zone, southern zone. It was all occupied by the Germans. So we'll go back now to my grandparents. In 1944, before I was born, my mother, excuse me a minute, the same gentleman who helped my mother and my sister meet my dad, where my grandparents were, the same gentleman said, "We will take you to Switzerland." Mind you, Switzerland was 5 kilometers from the Swiss border, but they wouldn't go. They said, "We haven't done anything. We're good citizens." And my grandmother was 66, and my grandfather was 70, so they didn't want to leave. But the Germans didn't care what you did or how good you were. If you were a Jew, you were taken, period. So in March of 1944, my grandparents were arrested by the French police and were taken to Drancy, which is a transport center near Paris. And 3 days later, they arrived in Auschwitz and were murdered immediately. And I also lost 3 members from my French family and 26 members of my mother's German side. So we lost all these people. So then I was born, June 12th, 1944. I was supposed to be born in a hospital. However, the hospital was occupied by Germans. So I had to be born at home, which wasn't planned, but I was born at home. And my father had been, in the resistance, so we didn't know where he was. And my mother didn't know what to name me. In the Jewish religion, you usually name someone after a person who has died. Well, they didn't know where my dad was because he was fighting in the resistance. So they said, why don't you name him after Joseph, which was my dad? And that's how it became Josette. All my other cousins have J names, but they're named after a grandfather that had passed. So I'm the only one named after a living person in the family. So in 1944, 5 weeks after I was born, the Germans were looking for families of the resistance. And we lived in factory housing at the time. In fact, the neighbor upstairs from my parents had munitions under her mattress, so she was part of the resistance, but did not fight. So my mother had just had a baby 5 weeks previously. The gentleman, another resistance fighter who couldn't fight anymore because he was elderly, he pulled my carriage with his cane, and my mother pushed me up in a carriage to this other small town further up in the mountains, in a town called Almont. And they were bombed. There were 3 houses in this little town that was bombed. And the house in the middle went into the ground. And of course, everybody else came running out because, except me, because I was a baby. Well, the Germans landed, and can I have a drink, please? I'm not going to tell you. Okay, the Germans landed. At this time, my sister was nearly 8 years old. This was 1944 at the end of July. And they separated her from my mother, and they questioned her. Where's your father? Well, she couldn't very well say she's fighting you guys, the Germans. She said he's working in this other town, and that was fine. But then they had landed, and they became friendly with some of the French women. Take it for what it is, what friendly means. And we returned to our hometown on the back of a German truck, my carriage on duffel bags, and my sister and mother sitting on the other side on duffel bags. So we returned home, and we were strafed by bullets and by the Allies, but we were never hurt. And we stayed in France, and I'm going to have a little insert about my mother's side because she left Germany when she was 24. Anyhow, my maternal grandmother immigrated to the United States shortly after World War II via Genoa, Italy, on the last boat. She came with her 3 sons and my grandma, and they immigrated. We immigrated to Chicago, where I was raised. And one uncle started writing letters to different organizations to try to get us out of Europe. First, my mother and father and sister tried to get them out. There was no go. Then they tried to get my mother and sister out, and there still was no go. And then just my sister, who was a child, because she had sponsors in Chicago, her grandmother and her 3 uncles, and we couldn't get any help. We stayed in France until 1947, where we immigrated. Now, my one uncle started writing these letters. I told you that already. They were drafted into the Army, the U.S. Army, when the war with U.S. and Europe started. One of my uncles was part of a group called the Ritchie Boys. I don't know if you've heard of it. Camp Ritchie, Ritchie, in Maryland. And they were trained to interview German prisoners because they could speak the language and the way they acted. And I just found out about this a few years ago. My cousin called me and told me. And so they interviewed them, and they got a lot of information that kind of helped the war end a little bit. And they all came back home. They all survived. So here we are. We're down to 1947. And it's time to leave. And we finally were able to immigrate. We immigrated to Chicago, where we had family. And my mother and father started working right away. And my mother, neither one spoke English, so I think they worked for some people who spoke German, because my parents both spoke French and German and not English. And then, what's very interesting, my sister, who was 10 in 1947, they started her in school. She was 10, and they put her in first grade, which is she was humiliated. And of course, she didn't dress like American kids did. She had a wonderful school teacher who took her home every day during the summer to learn how to speak English and read English. When she returned in the fall semester, they put her right in 6th grade. And by 8th grade, she was literary editor of the school paper. So I like to tell that to a lot of immigrants, that you can do it. And I was a registered nurse for 50 years. I had all my education in Chicago. And that's pretty much my story. It's one of upstanders. This gentleman, his family himself, they could have been in big trouble. But he helped my mother and sister. And I'm going to go back a little, back to when my dad was in the resistance. They started bombing railroad trains and stealing typewriters and paper to send pamphlets to other resistance fighters. And then after D-Day, they actually went out and fought. And he came back. Everybody came back except those 29 members in my family. And that's pretty much it. Also, a little bit about Houston. There were about 1,000 Holocaust victims who immigrated to Houston. Now, we're talking about 1945. Of course, more came, some went, they died. And now there's less than 80. And I'm the second youngest of documented survivors, because there's still many survivors who will not talk about their story. And most of them are very old and frail. Even my sister, who's 88 now, she's still considered fairly young. We're talking about people that were born in the 20s and early 30s, so we were lucky all around. Of course, my parents didn't think so. My mother also had a terrible time as a child. I'm bringing this up for a minute. She was born in 1911, and World War I started in 1914, and she was sent away to live with her grandparents for a few weeks. She stayed there for 4 years, and when she went back home, she didn't know who her parents were. So my parents never wanted us to be separated because of this. And we were very fortunate. We immigrated as a nuclear family. mother, father, sister, and me. And so I consider myself very lucky. And any questions? Yes, ma'am. Hmm. No, there's less than 80.
Fewer than 80, okay. So if you're one of fewer than 80 survivors, does the Holocaust Museum kind of act
They
as a
keep-
focal
yes.
point for you and
Yes.
keep you together and
Yes, and I'm a volunteer there.
good, good.
And I was really a volunteer in this art gallery, but when they found out I was a survivor, they sent people up to hear my little story, and so I tell my stories well. Because there are a lot of people who won't discuss it.
So was it Madeleine Albright who didn't know until well into her adulthood that she was?
A lot of people didn't know.
Yeah.
Same with people of Spanish descent who were, their foreparents were in the Spanish Inquisition. They left Spain and they moved to Eastern Europe where the more Jews were. Poland had the largest amount of Jews. And, huh? Yeah, but they became Ashkenazic. And, yes? Question?
Were you finished, though?
Just about.
Okay. I was wondering if your story was written down somewhere.
Yes. And I have it. Both my mother and sister were both interviewed by the Shoah Project that Steven Spielberg put out. So they were both interviewed. So there's stories everywhere. And this is basically my sister's story that I'm telling you because I was too young to remember anything. And that's why I'm able to talk about it without getting really upset about it, because I don't remember. And my sister does. And when she tells this story, when she talks about her grandparents, she still feels weepy because they lived together for 5 years and were taken. And I want everybody, you should all come to the museum sometime and go on a docent tour, and they explain things very well. I would say come on Sunday, but if you're meeting, you probably wouldn't. But we have some excellent docents on Sunday, and I'm there almost every Sunday. Any other questions? Yes. Yes? Thursday. And they're closed on Monday.
I was wondering if you were familiar with the book Nazis on the Potomac,
No, I'm not.
because your uncles may be in that book. It's by Robert K. Sutton, who was chief historian of the Park Service, and it's about that group of people
Richie boy.
who were from Germany and spoke German and interviewed
Right.
prisoners of war to get information
Right.
from them.
And my uncle is listed. I found his name. He was listed under Julius. We only knew him as Uncle Jerry. And that was all new. I also received all these letters that my uncle had said, 50 or 60 letters to all these different organizations to try to get us out. However, they were sent to me by my cousin, his daughter, and they were in pristine condition. And they were starting way back in the beginning of the war. And I donated them to the Florida Holocaust Museum because I had lived in Florida for a while, and I donated there. And that's pretty much, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm not. I was in school in a town called Le Chambon-sur-Lignon in the 60s. That would be 1960s, and it was mostly a Protestant community. But I think they were just learning when I was there and was a student. I think it was just being learned how active they were in rescuing Jews and
Yeah.
hiding
Right.
them. And there was a book written about that town called Weapons of the Spirit, I believe is the name of the book. Sorry?
And actually, my cousin my oldest cousin in France, she was hidden for 4 years with her nanny. We were never hidden. We were never in a camp. We were never in a ghetto. So that's luck. Yes?
Okay, I was just going to say that when you're referring to the Ritchie Boys, there's a documentary, and it has some of the original Ritchie Boys, and it's really amazing. And I'm sorry I can't remember the name of it right now. I have a copy of it at my house.
Really? I'm going to have to look that up because I just found out not too long ago, and I was able to look at for my uncle, and he was listed under B. That was his last name.
Well, it just had a few of the men there that they had like collected them back together, and they were talking about how happy they were that they could go and kill Germans. You know,
I know.
payback. But there are some funny stories in there as well. And I was going to say something else that just
Yes,
escaped me.
continue.
But anyway, I'm really thankful for your, coming here and speaking.
I appreciate
and
it.
also all the work that you do at the
Holocaust Museum.
Holocaust Museum.
And I want to keep my story alive because I'm 81. And how long will I be able to keep my story and my history alive? And I will tell it as long as I can because it's very important that everybody knows about it and that this really happened. And
Yes. Absolutely.
any
Thanks
other-
again for coming.
My pleasure. I'm glad to be here. Anything else? Okay, that's it. My pleasure. I was always critical.
All right, thank you so much. Let's give her another round of applause. Before we have our final song from Glenn Ackerman and Joel the Love, sorry. I did want to take a moment and tell everyone that we're having lunch today after Oasis at Aladdin's Mediterranean Cuisine, 912 Westheimer Road, so we can continue the conversations there and just talk to people in community. And then next week, we will be having our picnic. So we will not be meeting here next Sunday, but we're going to be at the picnic tables near Miller Outdoor Theater. So bring a lunch, bring something to share if you'd like. We're going to have some lawn games, board games, just to have like a nice little community moment or community day while the weather's actually still like nice. All right, and then last thing, Tim would hurt me if I didn't mention it, but we do like to pay our musicians. We do pay for the space. So y'all are what make Oasis Oasis. And if nothing else, we're happy you are here today because this is truly a group to make a community. And y'all being here every day or every week is what builds that community. So thank y'all for being here today. If you are able, we do have a hat in the back that you can make a donation. And we do have the ability to make recurring donations. And if it's not in the hat, you can talk to Tim out at the front desk, and he can help you get set up with that. So with that last announcement, we'll go ahead and have our last song. Thank y'all so much. It's always a pleasure having you, so thank you.
Thank you for having us back.
You're welcome. All right, so this is our Sunday gathering. We hope to see you afterwards at Aladdin's and next week at Miller Outdoor Theater at the picnic benches. Have a great week, everybody.